This is Hammer Striker here. Today we're going to talk to you about the Ruger SR9c, the compact version of the popular Ruger SR9 9mm pistol. This pistol is really targeting the concealed carry market, so it has some features that would appeal in that area. First thing we'll do is I'll show you that we do have an unloaded gun. Some of the sizes of this, it weighs 23.4 ounces unloaded with a magazine. It has a 3.5 inch barrel. It's 6.85 inches long front to back, 4.61 from the bottom of the flush mount magazine to the top, and it's 1.27 inches at the widest point, which happens to be the safeties. The slide is a little bit narrower. This gun is melted in a lot of ways. It's rounded at the bottom, it's rounded here. The front of the slide is beveled in. So it's designed to slide in and out of a holster very easily. It does have a single row Picatinny rail for mounting lasers, lights, various accessories. It comes with the two magazines. It comes with a 10 round flush mount. This happens to be the California version, so it came with a second 10 round and an additional pinky extender. You can also get this in a combination with a 17 round magazine and a 10 round magazine. And the 17 round magazine has an extender like a lot of them have that basically extends the grip out, makes a little bit longer grip. This gun does have a magazine disconnect, and it operates in a slightly odd manner. If the magazine is out and the gun is cycled, you can pull the trigger and it will sound like it fired. But there's actually a two-stage safety in the slide, and I'll show you that when I get the slide apart, that prevents the firing pin from hitting. So unlike some magazine disconnects that disable the trigger and make it obvious, this one will sound like it's going to fire, but it won't actually do so. It does have a thumb safety, which is ambidextrous. The thumb safety, of course, is one of those polarizing things. People either demand them or totally despise them. This one works fairly well. If you do like the external safety, this one works fairly well. It's a little difficult to put it on. It doesn't easily flick to the on position. But it's very easy to flick off with your thumb. So you're unlikely to accidentally turn it on. So I'm hitting it pretty good with my thumb and it's not going anywhere. You're not likely to turn it on by accident while you're firing. But once it's on, it slips off relatively easily. It does have an ambidextrous magazine release. There's a button here and a button on the other side, so nothing that you have to swap back and forth. It's ready to go. The slide release, however, is not ambidextrous, and it can't be swapped over to the other side. It's on the one side, and that's that. It comes with decent sights. There are 3-dot sight setup. The rear sight dots are a little bit on the small side, but they're clear and easy to see. The front sight dot is a really large, nice dot. Both sights are dovetailed, so that you can replace them, both front and rear. The sights are rather custom to this gun, so you would have to buy sights that were dedicated for this gun. One of the nice features of the rear sight is it's drift and windage adjustable. For windage, there's a screw right in here that you loosen, and then you can drift it. And for height, you just turn this screw right here and you can height adjust it. So right from the factory, it comes with an adjustable rear sight. Some of the other safety features it has is it has a loaded chamber indicator, which is a very, very visible one. It's not really visible from the front of the gun, but it's very clearly visible when you're looking at it. However, at no point does it come up far enough to interfere with the sight picture. It's a drop safe gun. It has the split trigger as part of the drop safety, like a Glock and several others that are popular. And it has the internal striker blocks, along with the thumb safeties and the magazine disconnect that we previously discussed. The serrations on the front and the rear are very aggressive, but they're not quite painful. They're a little bit rough, but they're very easy to grip a hold of. And if you're somebody that likes to do a press check or trying to grab a hold of it cycle, you get a good solid grip on it. One other feature this does have is it has a striker status indicator on the back. It protrudes a little bit when it's in a cocked state and then disappears when it's fired. And as you're pulling it, it'll protrude a little bit. So if you were putting it into a holster and you had your thumb on it and you felt it start to protrude a little bit, that would indicate something's hooking up on the trigger. It's time to back off real quick. This gun, we had it at the range. It performed very, very well. It was easy to shoot well. It was comfortable to shoot, very manageable recoil. It was easy to shoot accurately. The only problem we've had with this one so far is with installing a magazine. When you go to slide the magazine in, it doesn't really want to lock. You have to kind of hit it. When we first got the gun, it was very difficult to install the magazines. You had to hit it pretty hard. As we've put some rounds through it and cycled it, now you can actually kind of just give it a little push. You push it in till it seats and then just push it a little bit and you'll hear it click. So I have a feeling as we cycle it a few times and it wears in a little bit, that issue will go away. Other than that, we had no failures to feed, no malfunctions, no issues of any kind other than having to, give it a fairly solid push to install the magazine. Okay, so let's go ahead and take this gun down. Taking it down is actually fairly easy. First thing you do is remove the magazine. If you don't remove the magazine, you won't be able to get it to come apart. Verify that it's unloaded and lock it back. In the locked back state, you'll notice that there's a cutout in the slide, and if you get the angle just right, you'll see there's a metal protrusion from this rather unattractive little plate they've got here that fits into that cutout. And this plate covers a couple of the trigger pins. It's not the best looking thing, but it does actually work well. On the other side, there's this pin here. You just push this down with a punch. I use this plastic punch. After you've had the gun a little while, even your finger will do it. And then you just pull this out. The only other thing you need to make sure you do is, and this is kind of odd, I've never seen another gun like this, right here is the ejector. If I can get it on the right side. Right there's the ejector. And before you try to take the gun apart, you have to push the ejector down so that it's down into the magazine well. If you don't do that, you won't get it apart. And you want to make sure that it's locked back solidly when you're going to do that, because if you're just holding it back and you do that and your finger slips, it's going to pinch you and that's not going to be very pleasant. So once you've removed the magazine, pop the pin, set the ejector down, release the slide release, and it's under spring tension, so hold on to it, and it slides right off. So now for some of the internals. The internals of the frame are very similar to most of the other striker fired guns you've seen. It has very robust front rails, nice rear rails back here, both sides. Of course, the trigger group is in here, the trigger bar, and the actuator for the striker block is right here. And turn it where you can see it. That's what will activate the striker block. But it's a fairly standard polymer pistol, frame setup. The slide is very similar to most other polymer pistols. The one thing that's a little different about it, this right here is the classic striker block. So this, if the trigger's not pulled, the striker can't hit. This back here is the magazine disconnect. Bring my thumb out of the way so you can actually see it. This is the magazine disconnect. This acts as like a secondary striker block. Both this and this have to be depressed in order for the trigger to actually allow the striker to come all the way forward. So if the magazine's not in, this one will be not depressed. That'll block the striker. If the trigger's not pulled, this will block the striker. So with the safeties in place, it's almost impossible to get this thing to fire without having a magazine in and the trigger pulled. At that point, it's firing, and that's really what you want it to do. Removing the barrel for cleaning is very straightforward. Pop out the guide rod. Which the guide rod's steel. Double captive recoil spring. Pop out the barrel, which is this your classic striker looking barrel. It does have kind of a matte finish on the chamber block and like a polished, almost brushed looking on the barrel itself. And there's a bit of a swell at the end of the barrel that will interference fit here to try to make sure that the barrel alignment stays a little bit tighter. Reassembly is relatively easy. Drop the barrel in, drop the striker spring in, and there is a little well, as with typical of them, that this fits down in. You want to make sure it's in there and centered. You know, you don't want it off to one side. Make sure it's nice and centered. It tends to self-center, but you give it a little bit of shove with your hand just to make sure. Slide back on. Lock it back in the locked position. Reinstall this pin. Now, one of the things you want to be careful is when you're reinstalling this pin, there's a spring in here that you have to push past to get it in. So once you start pushing it in, it's going to give you a lot of resistance, and then it's just going to go. You want to make sure that you have this little protrusion lined up either down or lined up with that hole but not up, because if it goes too far, you don't want to put a scratch on your slide. Once it pops in, line it up, pop it in place. At this point, you now have the slide reinstalled, but it's important to remember one more step. Remember this ejector that we had to push down? Well, now you got to pull it back up. So you just reach in there, pull it back up into position. Close it up and ready to go. As far from a disassembly point, that ejector thing's a little bit on the strange side. But that's the only thing that I've seen that's unusual about the disassembly of this. The rest of the disassembly process is very similar to a lot of the other polymer pistols, unlike a Glock or the Springfield XDM where you just pull two levers down. You know, a lot of the Striker pistols you do have to pop some kind of a pin out, but overall it's very easy to do. It works well, easy to clean. This gun was a pleasure to have at the range, and it would make an excellent concealed carry gun, especially for somebody that's wanting to have an external safety, which some people do, some people don't. And with the magazines, with the pinky extender, you get a nice 3-finger grip. The 17-round magazine would also do that for you. With the flush mount magazine, you get really a 2-finger grip on it, but now you've got the smaller grip. And the trigger. Let's talk about the trigger. Well, let's put the magazine back in, properly show the trigger. It has a relatively nice trigger. It's designed like a Glock and many of the others. You pull in the little tongue, a little bit of take-up. It's a little bit spongy, but then a clean break. Relatively long reset. It's actually almost all the way back out, so it's not a short reset trigger. Take up, pull the trigger. Now if there's a magazine not in it, trigger actually works the same take up, same break. Sounds like it fired, but that secondary block will have prevented the striker from hitting the primer, so it wouldn't have actually gone off. And unfortunately at this point, if I would have to put a magazine in, I'd have to cycle it to get it back in action, so I would lose the round that was in the chamber at that point. If you're shopping for something along these lines, there's a few others that you might also be considering that are in a similar size category. So you've got this that holds 10+1 with the flush mount magazines. You might look at something like this Glock 26, which is unloaded. This also holds 10+1. Very similar in size. Or you might be looking at this SR9c. This happens to hold 12+1. It is unloaded. And if we line them up next to each other, you'll see that the Glock is the shortest of the three. Not by a whole lot. And the SR9c is the longest by maybe a 1/4 inch difference between the shortest and the longest. If you look at grip heights, the Glock is the shortest grip height. I'll turn them so that you can see it. The Glock has got the shortest grip height. The FNH and the SR9c are almost identical. The SR9c is just a hair shorter, but fractions of an inch. From a thickness standpoint, this will be a little bit difficult to show. The Glock would be the thinnest, and the SR9c would be the thickest. But again, we're talking fractions of an inch. So dimensions is not going to make the difference between these guns for you. It's going to be features and functionality. The Glock has no external safety. The SR9c does have an external safety. And the FNS9 has no external safety. Overall, it's going to come down to the feel, what you like the feel of. This one has a little bit more capacity. This one's just a hair heavier when you compare them. So it fits well within the range of options in the concealed carry market, and there's a number of other excellent guns that are similarly sized to these. So it would make a good addition to your concealed carry, especially if you happen to be one of the people that does prefer to have a external safety. So if you want to hang on for some more range footage, and if you like our videos, give us a thumbs up, like, share, subscribe, and have a great day. Thank you.